Up next, it is my pleasure to introduce a man with decades of information security experience. I'd like to introduce Mr. Rick Howard, the Chief Security Officer for Palo Alto Networks.
Thank you, sir. Wow, there's a lot of people out here. It's pretty quiet. All right, how many SciFi geeks in the crowd? SciFi? Okay, you're going to like this presentation if it ever shows up here. Here we go. So that title is what I'm going to talk about. That is the boring title they made me give because I was coming to a NATO conference. This is really the title that it's supposed to be for the conference. How many Star Wars fans do we have out in the audience? Okay, my kinds of peeps. You're going to love this presentation, okay? All right, so what I'm going to talk about is if you've read anything in the news lately, you know that our collective information assurance teams have not been doing a great job of keeping the bad guys out of our enterprises. But I'm here to tell you there is hope. Okay, there are 3 innovations that I've noticed in the last, I don't know, 10 or 15 years that I've seen advanced organizations deploy that will help all of us figure out how to defend against the advanced adversary. So these advanced organizations, call them the Cybersecurity Community 911, they are leaning forward and doing 3 things, right? They are transforming their tactical incident response teams into more strategic intelligence teams. The second thing they're doing is getting away from the old school defense in depth model where we say, let's draw a big electronic perimeter around our enterprise and keep the adversary out, and transforming to a new model which is watching the adversary down the kill chain by collecting sets of indicators of compromise. And the third thing, and I think this is the secret sauce, if we get this right, okay, we will be well ahead of the advanced adversary. How do we all share threat information with each other, our peers, our competitors, and the general community? So let's start with the first one, intelligence. Back in the 1990s, I was in the US Army, and guys like me, we worked in security operations centers like this one, okay, and we were in the whack-a-mole business. Everybody knows what whack-a-mole is? You know, it's that game you go to a carnival and there's a little thing, a mole comes out of the hole and you hit it on the head, and then another one comes out and you hit it on the head. That's how we dealt with adversaries back in the late 90s, early 2000s. An adversary would come in, we'd see it, we'd take the computer offline, clean it, maybe do some forensics, put it back online, and wait for the next mole to pop up. And back then, that was the most perfectly reasonable thing to do, but in today's threat environment, it's kind of quaint, okay? It doesn't really work anymore. This is a picture of the US Army Information Dominance Center, and I worked there from 2002 to 2004. I coordinated offensive and defensive operations cyber-wise for the US Army. And back then, you might ask yourself, what is an Information Dominance Center? What do you think? We didn't know either. Okay, we weren't sure what it was going to be, all right, but we definitely knew it wasn't going to be Dilbert City and have all this advanced technology in a place that looked like we worked in the office. So what we did was, if I can make this work, okay, we knew we were going to bring VIPs in to look at our U.S. Army Information Dominance Center. We're going to impress them so they would give us more money. We knew that was going to happen. So what does that look like to you? Who's the geeks in the crowd? Nobody knows what that looks like? Enterprise, thank you very much. I was beginning to wonder about you all right? So, yes, that is the deck of the USS Enterprise. And what we did was the guy responsible for building the Information Dominance Center went out to Paramount Studios and said, we want to build the bridge of the Starship Enterprise in our Information Dominance Center. And the Paramount people said, no, you know, it's copyrighted, but we'll give you the designer. And that's what they gave us. All right, so there's no laser, but see the chair there? That's the captain's chair. Behind him is a raised platform where Worf would stand. And behind that is a glass sliding doors where a conference room is. And I swear we built the sound effect in that when it opened and closed, it went psh, like that. It was awesome to work there. Okay. So, but back then, we played whack-a-mole, okay? That's how we went after any kind of adversary. What's happened in the meantime is the bad guys have gotten better, okay? They've improved their craft. And our old school ways of defending the enterprise are not going to work that well anymore. It's like we built these electronic castles to keep the adversary out. Adversaries like infantry and cavalry, 10, 15 years ago, that's what we built. And then we expect the same defenses to work when the bad guys have upgraded to drone aircraft with Hellfire missiles, okay? What do you think the chances of that happening? Not likely. And by the way, there's going to be lots of cats in this presentation, so try to keep up with me, all right? So what we've learned in the last 10 or 15 years is that those attacks we're seeing from adversaries, those are not discrete events. They are not happening in a vacuum. That the adversaries are people too. They have motivations like cyber espionage, cyber crime, cyber hacktivism, warfare, mischief, and terrorism. And they're trying to accomplish goals in accordance with those motivations. And the good ones, in other words, the good bad guys, I think I said that, the good bad guys, the ones that are very successful at how they do their business, they have consistent and repeatable processes that we can track. Right, now, if we get lucky, if the white hats get lucky and actually block an adversary from coming in, what do you think the enemy does? Do you think he goes on his hands and knees and says, oh, geez, the white hats stopped me. I guess I'm going to have to become a donut maker because I can't be a hacker anymore. Okay, do you think that's what he does? No, that's not what he does. I had an old army boss of mine that says, you know what? The enemy gets a vote, meaning that if we try, the good guys do something to him, he's going to figure out a way to get around what you do to him, all right? That's what advanced adversaries do. So advanced white hats, they have learned that when they see the endpoint compromised, that's not the beginning of the attack. Okay, that is the endpoint. It is a combination or a culmination of attacks, okay, where the bad guy has had to work his way through the network, and that is the bad guy's campaign plan. So that's an interesting development that just popped up in the last 10 to 15 years. Now, the Department of Defense in the US, they've been doing this kind of campaign analysis against the cyber adversary for the last 10, 15 years. We even had a cool code name back when I was in the service called Titan Rain. Anybody hear Titan Rain before? Some of you old timers in the audience, okay? Titan Rain was, the military can't do anything unless we have a code name that describes it, all right? So Titan Rain was our code name for Chinese espionage, Chinese cyber espionage, all right? So since then, though, commercial organizations like the U.S. Financial Services ISAC, the Information Assurance and Analysis Center, and the Defense Industrial Base have learned how to track adversaries by campaign also. The financial sector, ISAC, is a group of financial organizations that share threat information with each other. The Defense Industrial Base are a set of commercial organizations that almost exclusively sell goods and services to the U.S. government. The rest of us, okay, are playing catch up with this kind of new way to think about the adversary. So the future for intelligence, then, is a transition away from the old tactical cyber incident management to understanding the adversary in the aggregate. Understanding what he's trying to accomplish, and understand how he tries to accomplish that act. We're seeing a transition from their old tactical incident response teams to a more strategic intelligence teams. Right? It doesn't mean the incident response teams go away. It just means we're elevating their thinking so it's more strategic. So you may be wondering what Unit 42 is. Okay, Unit 42 is the Palo Alto Network's threat intelligence team. Anybody know what 42 means? Where are my geeks in the crowd? Raise your hand, come on. What does it mean? The meaning, the life, the universe, and everything, exactly, all right? So all the rest of you didn't know, that's homework for you. You need to go get this book because it's the funniest thing I've ever read. All three books are really funny, all right? But the joke in this book is, it's a sci-fi book, so the president of the galaxy sets this computer called Deep Thought into figuring out what life, the universe, and everything means. And after a gazillion years, he has an answer. So the president's there, the entire galaxy's watching on TV, and the computer spits out the answer on a little piece of paper, and the answer is 42. So everybody looks right, everybody looks left. Well, what's the question then? The computer says, I don't know. We'll have to take another gazillion years to figure it out. Okay, that joke's a lot funnier in the book. So you all have homework to go read this book. You will love it. I swear you will love it. Okay, so when I was, in fact, if you go to Google and do a search on the answer to the life, the universe, and everything, you get this calculator with the answer 42. Okay, so that's other homework for the rest of you to do tonight. So I was hired back in November to be the Chief Security Officer at Palo Alto Networks. One of the things my boss, the CEO, told me to do was build a threat intelligence team from scratch so we can start collecting this kind of advanced adversary information. So when I was writing the documents about what kind of people do we need, what kind of equipment do we need, all that stuff, I got tired of writing Palo Alto Networks threat intelligence team. So as a joke to myself, okay, I started calling it Unit 42. Just to myself, because I'm kind of a sci-fi geek. Well, when the marketing VP saw it, he said, oh no, that's what we're going to call it. So the threat intelligence team for Palo Alto Networks is called Unit 42. Right, so go out and see what they published. They're doing some pretty good stuff. So in the intelligence room, we are seeing this tactical transition from old incident response teams to strategic intelligence teams. And the way you do that is you work the intelligence lifecycle. Anybody heard of this before? Raise your hand. Some of you have heard, some of you Intel geeks out there? All right, so this is not a new thing, but this is the way it works. You get direction from the boss and says, intelligence team, go be smart about the context of the advanced adversary. So that's what I did. I got that order from the boss and said, okay, boss, I'm starting. I go into the collection phase. And the way you do that is you collect all the data you have at your fingertips within your own organization. And you try to realize if you can answer the boss's question with that information. If you can, you're good to go. If you can't, you're looking for gaps. And you might have to go fill those gaps with other kinds of information. Open source information, maybe even by a commercial intelligence service. But once you get all that data into one place, the analysts take over and they transform that raw information, okay, into actionable intelligence for the business leader or for your government organization. Now, you might be surprised at who might get this, because now you have to disseminate the intelligence to the business leaders who can make those decisions. But we have a lot of different kinds of customers in the organization that might benefit from a threat intelligence team. So obviously, the IT security staff will benefit. The physical security guys will benefit by what we uncover. But the finance group, obviously they will, because what we're trying to show is impact to the business or impact to the government. Right, so anything that will materially impact the organization, the finance guys might be interested in knowing that information. The products and services guys, and even in a commercial outfit like Palo Alto, the marketing guys, because they want to brag about how smart we are to the rest of the world, so they will be also a customer of this threat intelligence team. So then it starts over, and you keep going around the circle over and over again. You never finish. You keep getting better and better over time. This is not a new idea. The first person that invented or came up with the idea of the intelligence life cycle was 2 U.S. Army colonels after World War II. They wrote an after-action report about how well the intelligence organization worked during that war, and they came up with this idea. But any organization doing intelligence worth its salt uses some form of the intelligence life cycle to do their business. Now, you all might not agree with everything these guys do, but you will agree that they're pretty good at what they do, all right? And the way they do it is following the discipline of the intelligence life cycle. So the cybersecurity community, the advanced ones like the government organizations and these commercial services, have been leaning forward on how to track the advanced adversary. Okay, I expect the rest of us in the next 5 to 10 years will follow suit and try to build our own intelligence capability. Which brings us to the second innovation. Anybody hear of kill chain before? Raise your hand. Some of you, most of the military people should know this, right? All right, so in our old model, when I started doing this back in the early 1990s, I know it's a long time for some of you young folks in there, but that's when I started. Okay, the model that we all used was defense in depth. And the idea was we would put various controls in our network so that if any one of them failed to block the adversary from coming in, the ones behind it would stop them. And that was our model, and the design of the defense in depth model was to keep the adversary out of our network. Okay, well, most of you know these kind of controls are nothing but a speed bump to the advanced adversary. And they're mostly based on signatures with no context about what the adversary is trying to do. They're designed to keep everything out of your moat, and they're very, very, very tactical. We have no strategic vision at all here. We don't really understand in that model what the adversary is doing in the aggregate. That all changed in 2011. These 3 guys, Hutchins, Kloppert, and Amin, wrote this white paper. These guys are from Lockheed Martin, called Analysis of Adversary Campaigns and Intrusion Kill Chains. Anybody heard this paper before? Raise your hand. Nobody. Oh, more homework. So Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, funny. Kill chain paper, not so funny, but pretty interesting, right? So they realized that the defense in depth model was designed to keep everything out. In this paper, they make the assumption that the adversary will get in. And if you make that assumption, what do you change in your defensive posture because you know he's going to get in? And they came up with the kill chain model. That's what they learned. They realized that the bad guy has to accomplish 6 or 7 or 8 things, depending on how you count them, in order to be successful in his ultimate goal. They have to recon the network to look for weaknesses. They have to develop a weapon that will leverage those weaknesses. They have to deliver the weapon. They have to exploit the weapon, install it somewhere. And once they've established a beachhead, they will establish a command and control channel back out to the internet to get more instructions for later operations. And after they've done all of those things, then they can actually do what they came there to do in the first place, all right, which is steal your credit card information, do cyber espionage, whatever it is they came there to do. They have to accomplish all those tasks first before they're able to do that. So actions on the objective might be exfiltrate intellectual property, you steal your credit card information, dox embarrassing email messages, that's been a thing for the anonymous crowd, destroy critical infrastructure, just kind of deface your website as an annoyance, and then for terrorism, create fear for your employees about what might happen in the future. The good news for the white hats is we only have to be successful once to stop the adversary, once in the kill chain. If we can stop them somewhere there, then the adversary has to back up and regroup and restart. Okay, so that is a more strategic look at how to defend the enterprise. Okay, and that is why you need a threat intelligence team in order to track the adversary by campaign to look for those operations inside your network. All right, in 2007, in Black Hat, Chris Kindle presented a paper on indicators of compromise sets. How many people have been to Black Hat in Vegas? 1 or 2? Anybody been to DEF CON? 1 or 2? Okay, you guys are security people? You have to go to DEF CON once in your career, not because it's a great conference, because it's a show. All right? Because all those guys are hackers and hacker wannabes. They've got piercings and purple hair and mohawks and T-shirts that say, I hate the man. Okay, and they all started back in the 90s, and now they're old guys like me, so now they're pushing strollers with kids with hair and piercings and T-shirts and stuff. All right? So you have to go just to watch that. Anyway, Chris Kindle presented this paper at Black Hat about the indicators of compromise sets, and this is how he defined them. Sets of forensic artifacts that describe the attacker's methodology. So the difference between a signature and an indicator of compromise set is that a signature is one thing, one item on the network, okay, where a set of indicators of compromise is the entire blueprint for the adversary's attack campaign. Okay, that's the difference. So a signature, like you all know, is prone to false positives, and it has no context about what the adversary is trying to do. Okay, as you collect indicators of compromise, you're seeing these things in your network. The more that you see, the higher your confidence is that you know who the adversary is coming into your network. Right? And that is why you need a threat intelligence team like Unit 42. In fact, we just published our first paper that you can go get on our website called the 419 Evolution, about how spammers have evolved over the last 10 years. It talks about indicators of compromise and how they've improved. Right? Here's the deal, though. If I know there's 100 indicators of compromise for the 419 scammers, and I see 60 of them in my network, I know they're in your network. And I'm pretty sure that the next thing they're going to do is command and control. So maybe you might be able to get out in front of them to see if you can stop them before they are successful at their mission. That would increase your confidence level. So indicators of compromise sets are being used by the U.S. government. They're being used by the Defense Industrial Base and the financial sector, ISAC. Okay, usually to track the advanced persistent threat. And when I say advanced persistent threat, that usually means Chinese cyber espionage. The DIB, as of last year, we're tracking 60 different adversary campaigns, okay? Maybe run by the same groups, the same hacker groups, but 60 unique adversary campaigns that they were seeing on government networks. Now, what we've learned, though, while we've tracked these folks, is that the hackers on the other side, they're not superheroes. They have resource limits just like you and I do, okay? They have repeatable processes that we can track, right? And that is why you need a threat intelligence team to kind of devote yourself to that kind of operation. So once I've collected all these campaigns, what I need to be able to do is share that with people that are not as fortunate as us. How do I share it with my peers and my competitors and just the general cybersecurity community? And that's the third innovation. And if I had told you back in the 90s, if I'd have gone into my boss and said, hey, boss, you know what I want to do? I want to share threat information with my competitors. What do you think he would have done? He'd have thrown me out. I'd been fired. There's no way that he would allow me to do that. He would assume that somehow that would have affected the bottom line. But you all know that security people, we're kind of utopian. We kind of feel the internet should be free. We should all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. We should help each other out. So people started to work on this idea, and these two organizations figured it out, the DIB and the financial sector ISAC. You know how they did it, though? You know how they figured out to share threat information with each other, even though most of these folks are competitors with each other? You know what the big secret is? They drank beer together. Especially the financial sector ISAC, for twice a year they would go down to their conference and they would drink beer together. They'd bring their family together, get to know each other, start to trust each other, and over time the financial sector ISAC is probably the best information sharing group on the planet. Now they had a little help. President Clinton back in 1998 signed this Presidential Decision Directive 63 that said all you critical infrastructures in the US, you will share threat information with each other. I'm not going to give you any resources to do it. I'm not going to give you any money. I'm not going to give you any people, but you will share threat information with each other. So they all formed their various ISACs. The one that got good at it, though, was the financial sector because they have lots of money, you may have noticed, and they threw a lot of people at it, so they're really, really, really good at it. In 2007, for the Defense Industrial Base, the Deputy Secretary of Defense said, you know what, you commercial organizations selling stuff to us, you will not sell stuff to us unless you share threat information with each other. So they had an incentive to do it. All right, so this is what they told them, threat information sharing between commercial companies that support US government contracts, you will do it. Now, these two groups, I set them as examples. They're not perfect, but they're so far ahead of the rest of us that we need to look at them as the model to show how we do this in the future. The big hurdle to this is standards. How do you share threat information together that's not in email, that's not in weird spreadsheets? How do you make it more efficient? And because it's a problem, there's so many different kinds of standards out there. I was talking earlier with a colleague of mine. There are some 40 different threat information standards. And the problem is, like, it's OpenIOC and STIX and TAXI and Incident Object Description Exchange format. The problem is that nobody wants to choose one because we're afraid we're going to choose the wrong one, spend resources getting it ready, and then realize it's the wrong one, everybody's using something else. All right? We're afraid of doing that, and we need to get away from that and just decide to get it done. All right, so it's time to decide, though. We've been messing around with this for over 15 years, okay? We need to decide on a format and make something work for the rest of us. Now, there has been a tipping point this year. I'm pretty happy about this. Both the financial sector ISAC and Microsoft has adopted STIX and TAXI as their framework of choice. The financial sector ISAC will roll out their version of STIX and TAXI, developed by MITRE, by the way, so it's open source. They will roll it out at the end of this year. And Microsoft announced this year that they're using STIX and TAXI for their MAP program. It's how they share information to vendors before they release their Patch Tuesday report so that the vendors can publish their signatures in time. All right, so I think we're at a tipping point. I think STIX and TAXI is the format that we're going to use. So you should all take a look at, go look that up and do some studying on that. All right, and just so you show that we are behind this idea completely, I don't know if anybody noticed last week that Palo Alto Networks made an agreement with these 3 other cybersecurity vendor competitors, okay, Symantec, Fortinet, and McAfee. All right, we've decided that we are going to share our own threat information that we all individually collect with each other, not just to protect our own internal networks, but to protect our customers. Because we believe that intelligence is not something we're trying to sell. We are all trying to sell a better product or a better service, and threat intelligence is not going to be that. So my boss felt so strongly about that that he made this alliance. So now all 4 of these cybersecurity vendors are sharing threat information with each other to protect the community at large. All right, so that's where we are. Now we're time to get success. We want to look like this kid in the picture. We want success and how to share information, and we can get there. I'm very optimistic about this, right? So, and I truly believe that sharing threat information is the secret sauce for how we defeat the advanced adversary. All right, so I'm at the end. I told you at the beginning that if you read the paper, you know that bad guys are getting into our networks. I know you know this. Information assurance groups are struggling, but there is hope out there. So the 3 takeaways from this presentation are advanced organizations are innovating and figuring out how to transform their tactical incident response teams into intelligence teams. Okay, they are evolving from the traditional perimeter defense into a more strategic defense model like the kill chain model using indicators of compromise. And they're embracing information sharing as a way to get ahead of the advanced adversary. And I did it in the right time frame. I'm at the end, so thank you very much. Do I get a prize?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Fantastic presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Very dynamic. Very much appreciated. Thank you for supporting the symposium this year.
You betcha.
Appreciate it.